You'll laugh, but I'm a member too. It est benefactoral. Damn it. Otherwise they won't come when you're on fire. More correctly, they do arrive, but what can you do if you don't get a hose on it quick enough? No, no, I donate every year. 50 marks to the fireman's ball. It pays. Come on with me to the little bridge. We can loll on the railing. If a hand threatens the farmer's wife with setting her house on fire at Cuckold's Crow, no wonder in a podunk called Fall Urzadom, he noted bitterly. Scort, my friend, scort Laban. That's just the concave version of it, he riposted cantankerously. On all the wooden power poles tacked up notices 8 by 11 inviting to the moist motley of blisses. Likewise in every farmyard crackling sons adorning themselves for the dance, and the red-limbed daughters' shoes were being oafishly waxened. There an especially bull-necked seraph was working schmaltz on her hair, and both did whinny with prosperity and impatience, for the hatchet ahaft must be found, ruricola, betimes the tiller of the soil, the damsel urgently needs something warm in her belly. Was that a car over there, with a bright folding boat on the roof? May weak ends go to the dick ends, propped on the railing. Behold, the backwards critters, bag wood. For the fount Nixie from before, Fekin was not, uncloddishly, and midst 50-pound undulations, approaching her free wilder. First off, he mutely produced such a procrustean organ, jerkin woolwider, pecker pistol Percy, pick pull pego pud, from a slang thesaurus, hers quaff quim, mind your P's and Q's. That little urbanette nearby let out a breathless cry of joy, and the plump girl's scarf was already jumping like hoop skirts in the wind. The stouter the bride, the sturdier the boar. Balonial belly bangs. His bristly loins carried a vulpine stench, and she gave off a kind of hippo manes that could be smelled a 5-minute ride away. Perfectly correct. P growled. The man who respects a woman is the object of a woman's scorn. We ergo upon our observation bridge, yonder the world as will in first stilling. Pudtree, above all things, is a beautiful painting, whose tints, to minute inspection, are confusion worse confounded. But start boldly out to the cursory glance of the connoisseur. Letter to B, by Edgar Allan Poe. The man's a naughty club pointed occidentally. All the same, he scratched himself, her arms already shouldered, behind his crooked ear. Had he forgot something? That'd also be the first time a wolf and butthole lumberjerk had ever put a condom to use. But he gave his mouth a philostropical swipe, and then kissed her large lips, ice, frugally and slyly, with such gross tenderness that even the one camper on the far shore of the big pond scoped his head round in a confused circle. But then he lingered no longer. She too, her breast faultly savagely high, tugged him impatiently by one ball big as a closed fist, and then came the usual cloddish cute peasant joggle, the familiar contortion of a merry mage. He took his tail and brayed like the bull of Phalaris, and she, wheel-hub for a belly-button, funneled round so rumpadedly that this couldn't have been her first hedge wedding. Somewhere he'd heard where you'd need to do that first off, and the evening flight of lampwings, 30 or 40 of them, in a wide wave from east to west word overhead. The little girl had also hid herself behind a birch and alder copse, and looked across to us sternly and dreamily enough to set the rods wobbling. Dumb fuck's good, Paul said enviously. Did you know that, let's say in Egypt, lads clad only in short skirts stand along the edge of the highway and lift 'em said item when Lady Golden Age rides. Lads clad only in short skirts stand along the edge of the highway and lift up said item when Lady Golden Agers ride past. Their counterparts are pantyless girl horrors who crouch in a knee spread at roadside, arsa fotita. And the bush spook doubling her immoral efforts with daring doe hands. Mommy yonder had put a round and flat record on, or maybe flat tire. Looky there, the love storm gallop from the opera ball. She caught a whiff. An acquaintance told me that he'd been on a kind of photo safari, not much better than a confidence game, by the by, he added offhandedly. Lopez and Pervetti had meanwhile, with enviable speed, completed his day's plowing. He now staled copiously, bronco at work, and she too pissed the meadow full from a stubbled box full of farmer's cold cream, squatting dull and dribbly beside her rustic rube. As accompaniment to Dialogus Crematorum, presumably agreement for the new rendezvous in tit-a-tit. First things first, his red horn disappeared into its little blue linen hid away above it the preening vat of a breast. We firemen fight the fire, but no longer use a hose that we put in ladies' bellies and water till it overflows. Do you know that the painting by Felician Ropes, the nude woman and the fireman, his hose in his fist, ready for action? Well, where's the fire? Is that a fact? Interested, but nope. Wilma wouldn't let me bring stuff like that into the house. He propped both elbows on the furiferous railing, watching Muffy's tupper please, he of 100 words, move away at a radio-bustin' homely gait, all certified troglodyte, whom no one could claim ever having beheld washing his own feet. Mission accomplished, I'm ars viva. The heavily hootered one rose up and stood like a yawny on column, of piccolo smutty aspect, and now she looked, fat and fiery red, like the ghost of a potato beetle larva. Your wives are your fields. Set them under the plow. It's fairly common in this neck of the woods for a young hussy man to have to first screw his mother-in-law before he's allowed to go at his wife. But P was able to offer a classic quote right off. Should a young man desire a young woman, he ought not first enjoy her before having had a taste of and tumble with older ones. Droysen, Aristophanes. But, say, tell me, if you had a choice between a swallow's nest and a Casbah... Look, a pre-Freud. Yes, well, and Guan. Get to the point, please. I'm particularly poor at solving those riddle questions. What is the difference between... Well, don't play, haven't got a clue, Paul replied and directed his chin hither. Casbah, Arabic for fort, small castle. To where the camping trailers knaushed together, mobile home. Your home away from home, plus mirror image. The howling car, fjord green, a buh on its rear end. Fishing prohibited, my friend. He, a broad leather zone round his equator up top the icy pole, perched upon an Altoona folding chair and gazed a great way towards the setting sun. She, adorned in a long blackish-red veil, was across the well-greased... was pretending she had some brash to polish, gazed up at us, however, across the well-greased axle, James Joycing in taking a flirty-gurty dip. Swedish travelers, i.e. pretenders to the Krona. Since the guy was righteously wearing the pair of shorts he'd been coerced into far below his shop-worn head, idling feebly, Paul dubiously. Or is it a bungalow? 8, and supposed to be easy to get on the car, though. We were just about to get around it to ourselves before Wilma studied the matter. Hey, but looky there. For having by now gathered a large audience, the said lady unwound the veil from her charms and tripled toward the water, courting Neptune for an embrace. While dipping the toes of her left foot in the brooklet, she also demonstrated her voice for us. Valerie! And the little girl got a firmer grasp of her feminine, since Mommy was busy pre-cooling her roar parts. True, just a black one-piece, but full of the prettiest female figure. I'm for a kempt lady's crouch, the Persian among 0 haircuts. Paul, thoughtfully. Pretty thick thighs, and arms. Take a gander at that stall gait. Simple in its intricacy, it seems to be the spontaneous effusion of humanity, congenial to the want of man. And challenged me with his eyes. You are totally polluted by those trailer terms. How do you cook in there, or heat those rather large objects? With profane gas. He riposted, likewise subconly offered me a small sample. You Prattwoods Romley. With the cutest built-in cupboards. You screw atop polyester foams. Its conveniences, together with its perfect proportions, makes it a dwelling for immortals. friends of religion and speed. You appear to foster some very corrupt notions of eternal bliss, friend. Not to speak of love, just don't let Rue catch up with you. 'Tis hopefully our poor urchin will be coming soon. She's gonna belly-liker herself into a knot. While yonder, a new friend of nature in a wash-and-worn shirt came reeling out of the streamlined wagon, then jumped at all neighboring trees and stripped them of their foliage. Urban cattle. Jamais au fou, Paul replied with defiant orthodoxy. If it were only on your horror field, then you'd be blathering refinedly about dear nibbles, nicks, Vivat VFWs, but she surely could have pulled it off by now. As pale as did from mini-dreams. We are, after all, specimens for a case study, Paul, however, said. Well now, it's a curious feeling to know the female fingers herself daily. Who files sorry for others is thinking of himself. And simultaneously, one shot rang out, and simultaneously a conservative strolled on past us. G'day, Roganbuck. Just another term for foe of progression, this conservative of yours. Gentleman of the old school, another oddball, interestingly psi-analytical process resonantly in his fumly. His young-assed brother not only humped his two still younger sisters, but also rudely, nudely tugged Mommy herself over the ironing board. Nope, for add years in Norway it's a perfectly normal Viking practice. The effects of solitude there. Look at that! For the little girl, finished now, flipped out of the bushes, still dancing Mommy-wards. So ingeniously is the water warm, where by a course she rinsed off her little hands, shambled. Say what you will, Paul, this pine tree slaughter by human beings, 100 million every year, is barbaric. Way to treat plants. So let's adopt the term of the camper nibble, shall we? I have no little desire to write a fulminating article against it. Was that not yet another stab, heart-wise? The living crate in Pym, the meticulous outfitting of Rodman's boat. Miserable toadstool of an organ, and this, well-cursed extended mental game that evidently wanted to crowd in yet again, picking up on the cue of horror-filled. This sorta shack was naturally countrified, lovelier than those chic please stick-skinned cavelets, but all the constriction materials would also have to be driven all the way in, right across Crew's fields. But even then, Dan, canvas pattern camouflaged, chemical John, all of id pretty thin eggshelled, pliably intricate, loop fringy, even though senseless, me, olfactor, and my scrawny typewriter, while she masturbates till blackout. That these huntresses are allowed to shoot at a guy, that's an utterly unpleasant sound, Paul cried. Yes, they once shot right through the car and just past my head when I was riding said cruise. Hadn't Charles de Gaulle, Feb. 68, a stadium for a whole day? Can we move on, Paul? Or do you want some more squints of that bodice? A competent person, Paul said defiantly. Not one of those cult chicks hollowed out by magic, your basic tailor-made. Well, neither have got much complaint in that department with Wilma, either. Quite apart from her literary accomplishments, as if I were gnawed up with jealousy. He said at once, That's painful. We separated, dodging a cow that came striding down the road behind a kind of rustic granger who gave us a look of displeasure from heights of which a non-granger cannot conceive. Foolish petrifact. Her erudition was profound, her powers of mind were good, gigantic. Morella. Stick with you, crippled duffer mask fellow, again to Paul. I thought you were going to break out into the approbatory cry of heaven's gifts, the greatest charm. That's how the ladies think, you mean, Paul corrects. To hold so sweet a thing tucked in one's arm, and as for world literature, if I want to hear a reasonable word in that regard, I have to converse with myself, my women. They are not even at the receiving end. On the other hand, she has the gall to keep count of my condoms. And honor those men 1,000-fold, for never has a woman invented anything, Sheffer vigils. We were somewhat silent, so as to walk more slowly and view the collection of humans at the bus stop, an aging hammersmith. Carl Quinty, he named his wife Notchel. a paper folding bag beside. Wayne, first named Thekla, the spindle-nosed woman's dressed so grimly, face like a foot. She coquettely lowered her long white eyelashes and cast Paul a vigorous, fuckrous, sexagenarian glance. Come to the zoo. What about you? You may go too. Come to the su. Under cover of the vocal hubble-bubble, omnibuzzy amp pushy. Take your eyes off the pale yellow sheen-owned, Paul. The Megitoria, the indigenous damsels, have such robusty wrists that watch straps are guaranteed to be too short. Does that not give you pause for thought? Besides, her father's the druggist and you can smell it on her. Not to mention done up in an outfit that was exemplary combination of the latest in tastelessness. Regard instead one of the truly remarkable sights of this hamlet, right beside the modestly painted iron rod of the sign that 0.0 kilometers stone the town's Millennium Aureum. Do you see it? Only too well. At least twofold huffish. Well then, have a gander at the other side of the road, where in fact a presumably wise and honorable authority did not scruple to plant at the distance of a poor shot put through the subsequent 01, since he did not know, couldn't know, and would rather have gazed into the ignorant jade's tautly spanned ass and rebust her. One of the shortest hectometers of Central and Western Europe, publish doubt and call it knowledge. That guy with the ravaged look there, who was putting his watch through his paces and counting, you could tell from the nods of his thorax. A bankrupt master butcher. Some jokester put the rumor out that he'd struck his knife right in the middle of his apprentice's rectum. Every customer promptly envisioned that it was his particular sausage that had been sliced by that same knife. Oh say, no desperately ad was of any help, no sworn oath with however many fingers he had to close up shop. A real tragedy for my friend. Two elderlier grangers were sitting on the high cemented rim of the dung and slurry pit yonder, chewing the fat, pulled spuds from their pocket which they inspected with paternal pride, and then with hernia-inducing gestures exchanged mismatched wooden clogs in their feet, the right forearm shiny with snot. Shove a mouthful of aspirin tablets in his mouth. A guy like that can't count to 3 with his tongue. Instantly interested. Lagran's chief amusement, sauntering through the myrtles in quest of shells, mussels, or entomological specimens, horny insects, and Lepidoptera, gullied bugger. Yep, she does that, for Frau Buxom now strode past her spouse, paying no heed to his deceitful but dissipated slap, gave me a proud wink, and called to the big German shepherd, "Fetch the cows in!" And it began at once, prowling the ditch dry, too. I knew the trick. Watch carefully, Paul. That in any case, he replied, and gallantly gazed at her Letta pumper. You'll be amazed if you should ever hire a maid, and you'd have an organ of concupiscence thick as blood. Thick as a bloodwurst. Bloodwurst. Wurst. Distracted by the omnibus, now half full of illiterates, half full of ill-whatevers, 20-yearsers with monstrous beards. We'll soon be at the point where we'll have to wear falsy ones. Well, Paul, around 1900, it was at least the men between 30 and 60. Oh, I view the matter differently, Paul, as if pondering, whereas he was just ogling the bit humanist yonder. My women likewise consider it a token of virile energy, presumably within the inflated subcon thought that there must trickle-rickle during a pussy-licking. Look there, it's driving in 'em. 2, 3, 4 head. And actually gave it a bow, applauding. Tisk, well, yes, at 50, one still has one's dreams. Bon poir, Nicole, Paul. Bonum peniculum, you mean. Or would you really be degenerately overbred enough to be snooty about such goods? First, you'd probably be surprised at the sight of such goods, and second, in fact, yes, reek below, and unadulterated monosyllabism atop. I dunno, those bodies are so vacuous, far beyond the amount generally conceded to a female. She probably bent her aft castle toward him, 0, and watched him over one hip from the left side. That's something I don't understand. I'm not such an aesthete. Dismissive and candid. The conductor, part ferryman, part veteran, but unmistakably now considering whether he too should beard himself, jumped up and handed out a forearm full of official packages. The town council chairperson had long since taken up her stance and was staring stalkily at Paul. Oh, I had to greet her. Good day, Frau Hedemann. She just nodded up top. She announces the weather to her subjects as well. People watch how she's dressed in a broad-rimmed hat and cape wrap. It'll soon be the wind and the rain. Grayish-brown keeper of ordure. Beware, she's got a kind of perpetuum mobile under her skirt, too. She vanished into the Mary, and Paul ran behind her, at least as far as the bulletin board. You want to register in her office? He had passively and conspicuously slipped a hand under his waistband while he let his eyes pretend that they were studying the parish news lost. Round here almost nothing was ever found. What do you know, the Strack girl was going to have to get married after all. Well, she'd looked that way last month already. Soccer. The fearsome Squirtlebin 11 were going rout Marlow next Sunday. God bless the partisans. Do authorities here always include in their warrants the fugitive's weights? Holy Crispin! He had, who stole leather and gave shoes made it from the poor, buckled over even farther and was stomping and fingering. Damn, Paul, I'm begging you. Take your hand away. To be sure, the Chancellor needs soldiers, but she's pecking from behind the curtain. He shot me a toxic glance. First off, my right shoe is nothing but shambles. And what's more, hey, I put my underwear on backwards. I can't find the slit. Just picture some young lad about to inspect his bride, who in his haste and hunger has that happen to him. Do make a note of it, friend. 'Tis a detail for a short story. What? Knee length, besides, so that you can't pull it out below legwards? Poor wretch. He actually jotted. Hold on, you can use the John in the pub. If you prefer not to regard it as a personal intervention of the Lord, who has sent this slip of the undies upon you to keep you omnipotent for this evening, as you yourself hinted. No cursing, Paul. So let us ride on into town and view it for the fun, both in and out, upside and down, and we've only just begun. But he bitched all the same. If only I had the foggiest clue how I'm going to be able to dump all those Poe products. Do you hear the Adams psst in the sense of your blather? Fug, glue, and Popo products that you need to dump. You definitely need to sit on the throne. The closest public one is at the train station. No wonder, given all the damn gorging I've done here, ruefully and ungratefully, he noticed it himself too, and by way of apology and to solicit understanding, showed me his insole, broken in the arch besides. Come on, we'll buy a new pair. Just toss those away. Ah, Guan. For starters, she won't even notice, and if she does, the gain will outweigh the loss. I've got to stop it anyway, honest I do, to buy a pair of wooden solars for Franzel. She broke the strap on hers now, taking a leap. Well, and stepped with him right up to the window shop. End of his clothing took he the measure, Chaucer. Their panes are of crimson-tinted glass, set in rosewood framings more massive than usual. Philosophy of furniture. Shoes. Shoes on glass trays. Shoes on silver threads. Shoes in precious little sets of shelves. Blue wood, moire, wood, mandrice. An arm-shell carved from the wooden body of a beloved tree nymph causes, every time it's sat upon, violent erections. The arms make easy rising more difficult. Rocks when you're weary. There, that delicate green-veined shelf from Madagascar. Over Madagascar in the east, behold the dawn is glowing, he muttered, being an educated man. How do you figure that out? Well, 'cause putting my little German mouth to use, I'd ask. What draws your eyes to that spot? Those rubber booties? The silvered pair? Scarcely, I'd think. Pricey territory round here, Paul said, remorselessly, because the icy glass wall right behind was pushed up, and a plump girl's face was staring at us. So then check out the price. Propos. The daughter, Polly's sleep around her, like females all. Prices. You do keep a close eye on the value of money in the Poe era, don't you? Just as for his time itself, the rounded equation, Greenwich minus 5 hours. More precisely, well then, from Boston on a slant down to Charleston, minus 445, up to minus 520. But you aren't paying attention to what I'm saying at the moment, are you? I'm sorry, Paul said, and kept on staring at the pair of shoes, surveyor's boots. 54.60. Oh Lord, I was famous after all throughout the region for being able to fork over in cash my pocket change. Special offer. He licked his lips. He said, Last time they surprised me with a lighted cake on my birthday. 54. Warped and ill-matched shrubs, and in the middle one more. Grown limp from the heat, pale and stunted like a codger's prick. I was on the verge of cursing, distractedly. If it hadn't been for the one crazy present from Francisca, She'd covered a piece of cardboard, he demonstrated, so about 6 by 8 inches, with green pastel fabric. Up top, 2 immortelles, below them a calendar, she begged, from some peddler or other. Wilma, of course, is still just clueless, and he was trying to. Come on inside instead, to the shopkeeper behind the counter. Nope, sort of rusty brown, yellow in the middle, the other one already white. To the shopkeeper behind. Do you mind showing me counter where the cash treasury stands from Thesaurus? It's a special order, right? Yes, absolutely, he replied in zone refugees. A senior surveyor had them made for him. What all I had to set in motion for these. Waterproof, compass safe, shockproof, and all of a sudden the guy up and dies on me. Please, he coerced Paul, at any rate, to the wicker chair. Colors, too, to paint the body. She held within her hand the daughter that is, a face, from Latvia-Prussian regions. Paul bashfully plucked at his old pickle. You got any holes in your stockings? The opposite would surprise me more. They're 2 different colors at least. Say something by way of distraction. So first I had Miss Eaststrap set the shoes out for him, and then pulled her aside. A pair of lovely cloggers for Franzel. These here, tough wooden soles, shaped pretty and lively, and the caramel-hued leather strap, stoutly wide but supple and oiled, on the small end of the box over the image of a widow, clad in knot by a kind of horse collar, and these same sort of sandals here. She was looking downward, enjoying her outfit, much virtue in shoes. Then again I said to Paul, yet one word anent Lord Lytton, that he, Poe, knew among other novels his earnest Maltravellers. Does it fit? The locksmith, Stitch the tailor, Flora Corpse the gardener, Titus Firefox the barber, Farmer Weedman. Which hero's named Ernest? Voldemar? If you turn it around, you could almost turn into a Maldarave Urs, couldn't you? The left, yes, in fact, first rate, he whispered, to keep the dealer from getting carried away. Check out the nips on her. You should be thinking of your own daughter instead, and if she were stuck in an enterprise like this, just look at the boss's sharp-nosed goat profile. From the first morning, she's had to stretch out in the comptoir. Hit hard, he lowered his head. So move ahead with bulwer tricks. There's a sort of famous marginalia that begins, some Frenchman, possibly Montaigne, says, people talk about thinking, but for my part, I never think, except when I sit down to write. We've yet to deal with those in some detail. And then there's that silly appositive, some Frenchman, possibly Montaigne himself. That's taken verbatim from Maltravers. Coincidence? He growled. Question. Growls of embarrassment. And?